did there. It's funny. Alrighty. Jacob Brown.
Carson, Gregory.
Jeez. All right, buddy. All right, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. Today is number 10. So I brought Jacob Brown on. He sent me a text and was like, "Hey, I really want to talk about some environment stuff. I want to talk about like the carbon tax and all that type of stuff." So I was like, "Why not? That's pretty interesting." Jacob's also a really cool guy, so that's a plus. So Jacob, what are we gonna do today? What's the main thing you want to talk about today?
Well, I want to talk about climate change and more specifically the solution to climate change.
Yeah.
That being, I think the best solution to climate change is a carbon tax.
Yeah. So what like into the carbon tax? What things would we be taxing? Just fuel? Would we be taxing energy consumption? All that type of stuff. What do you think?
Well, so pretty much a carbon tax would be, well, it's a tax on fossil fuels. So
Yeah.
it's a tax on like industry that produces carbon dioxide as
Yeah.
well as other greenhouse gases such as methane.
Yeah.
Or also just industry, just energy companies, whatever.
So do you think like factories? Because I know like Stelco and that's not Stelco or DeFasco in our local area. Like they do produce a lot of carbon. Would they? So they would be taxed a whole bunch overly just because they're producing that type of stuff, or would there be some other like breaks for them because they're a factory and they're producing a whole bunch of money to power the economy? Or
Well, so pretty much, so the revenue that the government generates from a carbon tax,
yeah,
I think what would happen with the revenue is that it should go back to individuals as a rebate because
Yeah.
because obviously if you're taxing factories, businesses, what they're going to do is raise their prices.
yeah,
And that's really the point of a carbon tax, to increase the price of fossil fuel so people will consume less of it.
yeah. That's true.
And that's an incentive for people to move to more renewable sources. And obviously the government will generate a lot of money with that. But
Yeah.
And obviously if prices of energy, transportation increase, and people, that could hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, what about because there used to be incentives for like hybrid cars and electric cars. Do you think that should come back just because it'll be easier? Like there'd be like a $10,000 tax break because we're taxing those other things. Because I know for sure, like when my parents were looking for a new car, they were like, "Oh, we should probably get a hybrid," and then just as they started looking for something, they got rid of them, and that just kind of ruined the opportunity. So we would have had a hybrid car, but they completely took it away. Do you think that's something that should be there 100%?
Oh yeah. I completely agree that should be there. Like that's like, but a carbon tax is also like would incentivize people to buy an electric car, because obviously if the price of gas goes up, that'll incentivize people to buy an electric car so they don't have to pay as much in gas, right?
For sure. So what are these? Because you seem to know a lot about this stuff. I want to get back to, because what I normally do with all the other guests is like, what was kind of like the driving force of your passion for like finding out information about climate change? Did you do like a school project on it, or was it something along those lines?
I think I've done a lot of school projects on climate change within the past few years. Just thinking as far back as grade 7. I think for science fair in grade 7, I did about global warming, and also in grade 10 for 2 classes actually I did about climate change in physics and as well as English and
Oh, so you took physics in grade 10?
yeah.
That's hefty. I heard nobody enjoyed that.
Yeah, I heard everyone did in grade 10 in science. Everyone did pretty bad on the optics unit.
Oh, I didn't. I'm not a science guy, so I can't even talk about that. But yeah, so do you have any other examples? Like, because I know there's a whole bunch of places have been doing carbon tax, like they've been implementing them. Is there anywhere in Canada or like in the world that's implemented it and it's worked and it's become successful?
Oh yes, definitely. In Canada, British Columbia has had a carbon tax since 2007, and it's been revenue neutral. So all the revenue generated, they would give back to the public in the form of rebates, and it's actually had a it was a pretty small carbon tax, so it only reduced emissions by a couple of percentage points. But it was still.
But it still did something, yeah.
Yeah, and the economy in BC has still been doing pretty well. I think. I'm not sure like the exact statistics on it, but last time I read that it's one of the fastest growing economies in Canada.
Yeah, I know the gas prices there are insane, and that's probably due to the carbon tax. But do you think it was unfair in 2007 to have a carbon tax when the technology to support an alternative to to fossil fuels was there? Because in 2007 there wasn't any. The only like hybrid car that you'd have there would be like a Prius or something like that. So was it? Do you think it's unfair that they started a carbon tax when there wasn't the infrastructure or the setup for electric cars and hybrid cars to be there?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't really know much about like technology and electric cars, especially from that era. So
Well,
I really don't know.
no, I'm just saying. Do you think like there's certain things that like since the technology wasn't there, and we can both say that, do you think it was unfair for the government to go into it and go, oh, this is what you need. We're gonna tax you because we want you to drive less with no other alternative. Do you think that was unfair, or do you think it was right because they're focused on cleaning up the environment?
Well, like I think there's ups and downs to that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the downs being, some people like the electric cars were pretty expensive back then, so that could hurt a lot of poor people. But then the upside is that, you clean up the environment more.
Yeah, that's true. It's a difficult topic too. No, well, not too difficult, but it's just like there's so many different issues that come along with it, especially with like the ice caps melting and like
Yeah,
birds going extinct. Like just recently, the bird from Rio, like the cartoon.
yeah.
Yeah, apparently the blue macaws just went extinct
Oh
now,
wow, I didn't
which
know
is
that.
like yeah, that's another thing with the environment. Like, do we really care that much? Would it hurt our wallets or would it completely hurt our planet? And that's like it's like a big weight.
Hmm.
Do we really care? But it's also nice to see the push for all these different like electric vehicles and different alternatives and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I talked on the other podcast with Nick. We were talking a lot about Elon Musk and how he's got like the solar panel roof tiles that look
Oh yeah.
normal, or like the power wall and all that stuff, and especially Teslas and stuff like that.
Oh
But
yeah.
there's just all those different alternatives that are nice. Do you think in the future there's going to be an advancement in that? Well, there should be, but do you think that technology will be embraced by the government in the future, or like through tax breaks and stuff like that, or do you think it's just going to get worse?
Well, that really depends on because like I don't know if you've been keeping track on the Canadian federal election, but it looks like the Liberals are going to lose and the Conservatives are going to win. They're not a huge fan of the carbon
Even
tax.
yeah, it's weird. Even for like politics and stuff like that, it's kind of weird, especially just in the world as a whole right now, because like with Britain getting the new because of Brexit and all that
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
and all like the carbon tax is it's a weird because it's something that needs to happen, but everybody's so focused on different things as well with. Which another thing that always comes up here is like the media kind of skews things. Do you see that too?
Oh yeah.
Where like you'll say one thing and you'll mean it this way, and somebody will interpret it, and that's how, I bet that's probably happened in both of our lives, where you say one thing and someone interprets it as a total different thing, and you get in trouble for it,
Yeah.
or you get something like the backlash happens.
Like often people like take your words out of content.
Out of context, yeah, for sure, and that's happened to me a lot, believe me, and it is a pain, because it causes more issues, and I think we need to kind of focus and have a thought to ourselves about, is this what we need to do, or is this the main focus? And that seems to be an issue where a lot of people are like, this is what we need to do, and it's like 4 steps backwards, right? Do you
Yeah.
see that too with like just the government or and other issues?
Yeah, like I know like the government in the States they've been really like I know the United States they pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was
Yeah.
was the international agreement to an international agreement to reduce carbon emissions. And there's a lot of people in the United States government who don't even believe climate change exists.
Yeah, some of them even believe the world's flat, but no, yeah. So, is there any other things that really like sparks or like angers you with along the lines of climate change, like the ice caps melting or something like that?
Well, yeah, I kind of one thing that angers me a lot about that is that a lot of people they're not really taking into to consideration the consequences of the things they do in their daily lives.
Yep.
How like especially in a lot of first world countries, like we're doing so much better than the rest of the world, and climate
Yeah,
change is going to have the biggest effect on these third world countries.
that's true because they won't be able to have anything to support themselves after
Yeah.
that. And what other things? Because that is a really big issue. Just having like Canada, America, China, all those places that have all the so much power behind them, and they can't really make a decision to say, oh, we need to clean up the air. We need to clean up this. We're polluting way too much, and that's really just going to move downwind, kind of physically and metaphorically. It's just going to move downwind and kind of just destroy those other countries because their air is going to be either completely toxic or they won't have anything to support themselves, right?
Yeah. Like another thing with climate change is that could So some of the consequences of climate change are things like more heat waves and more droughts, and we're seeing in Europe right now
Yeah, it's getting
like
hot out here.
record heat waves, and I think that should also be a concern to us, especially in places like the Middle East. We're already getting a lot of refugees from the Middle East as of now because of war and
War and all that
conflict.
stuff. Yeah,
And if climate change is going to worsen droughts, then we're going to see an even worse immigration crisis.
that's true. I didn't even think about that. There's so many other. Yeah, it's climate change has so many other pressures behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other alternative sources kind of thing, because you look at it and it's like there's not only one thing it's polluting the environment, but it's making other environments way harsher.
Mm-hmm.
And even Syria right now it's terrible. It's not a great place to be. So if if it gets like 10 times hotter, what are we gonna do there? Like we're gonna have everybody's gonna be moving somewhere because nobody's gonna want to live there. It's gonna be Mad Max all over again.
Yeah, and there's a lot of coastal cities could be underwater within the next 100 years due to
Even
melting
Los
polar ice caps.
Angeles, it's gonna be because it's real. Like right, it's on the water, right? So it's there's been talks of it going underwater, and even with like pollution in the sun, they have to use in some of the like the LA River they use, which isn't really a river. It's just dirt. But yeah, even in some places, they're using in California, they're using these big black like balls
Yeah.
that they float on the water, so it stops the water from evaporating because the sun's just beating on it the entire day, right? So they unloaded these like millions of big of balls that just kind of that are in the water, and it stops the sun from hitting it, and they attract it to the ball rather than the water, which it works. But it's just like we shouldn't have to really do that because
Well, I wonder how expensive that would be.
it's really expensive. So they're not doing it in many places, and it has to be made of like this certain material that like reflects the sun back up, which is also got some consequences as well because it's like a big magnifying glass. So anybody in that area is getting like beaded with sunlight from the water, which is crazy. What other things really like motivate you? Because I know you said before the podcast started like pharmaceuticals. You want to go into that area.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you're gonna like do something with your chemistry degree that you want to get? Are you gonna do something to like help climate change or something like that? Because you're passionate about it now, or do you want to see it in the future? Do you want to start a movement or anything like that?
Like, really, climate change, like, I'm very passionate about that, but that's not really something I want to go into the workforce about.
Yeah, well, there's not really a workforce for it. It'd just be kind of like behind.
Like, from what I've been told, like, people who get, like, environmental degrees, those jobs don't really pay much.
Yeah, that's true. So let's go to something you would want to do then. What do you want to do in the future? Because, like we said, pharmaceuticals, maybe have your own practice as a pharmacist. Is that something you want to do?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like where would you like go into depth on that? Because I'm genuinely curious because we rarely talk, and it's interesting to hear somebody else's point of view and plans.
So, like, I've always been into the sciences and more particularly chemistry. That's something that I like in particular. Not like I also kind of like physics. I hate biology. I'm so bad at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like because of my interest in chemistry, that's why I've been kind of interested into going into the pharmaceutical industry, become a pharmacist hopefully.
For sure. Are you gonna like try and own your own practice or something like that? Or are you gonna
like
work for a bigger company?
Possibly. Like I really don't know. Like that's all in the future.
Definitely. Yeah. So we'll go back to climate change because I think we'll know what to talk about. But there's some things that like it's kind of unchangeable now. What do you see as the worst thing to come down in the future, where it's just like we can't go back from there, or like animals going extinct, or like something like that? What do you think's the worst that it can get in the next couple of years? Do you think it's going to be the end of the world, like many people say,
well,
or?
Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like I've heard some politicians say, "Oh, the world's going to end in 10 years." No, that's not.
Yeah, we've had like so many of those, like 2K or Y2K or like 2012 when they're like, "Oh, the Mayan calendar's ending. Everybody's going to die." Or just even like the climate change thing. There's a lot of people that get like jump the gun on it, right?
Yeah, like climate change, it isn't going to like it's not going to end the world or anything. Like it's an issue, it's a serious issue, don't get me wrong, but it's not like the human race is going to go extinct because of it. Like we humans have survived many things in the past, such as like ice ages or whatever it might be, but it is climate change is definitely a threat to our way of life in some respect, depending on where you are. Could get people
Yeah.
killed.
Do you have any idea which is the worst area to be in?
Well, probably in especially a lot of poor countries that simply do not have the infrastructure, um, like that do not have much access to clean water. That do not have the infrastructure to survive these stronger hurricanes that'll be a result of
So
climate
is it
change.
really just like an amplification of like storms and stuff like that? Because for us, it's just like we're getting worse. Even if you look at that thunderstorm a couple days ago,
Mm-hmm.
that was like kind of crazy to me because
Oh
I was
yeah.
outside
Oh
because
yeah,
I
I
was
saw
coming home
that.
from work and I was just like, this is super scary. And I was going down a trail and the winds just were like insane. So and I've never seen anything like that before unless it was like a hurricane when I was in Nova Scotia or something like that. So there's different parts where you're just like, this is crazy. Do you think it's just going to be a large scale amplification of weather networks and stuff